Today I will be reviewing two more books of the Stranger Things book series, namely RUNAWAY Max, the third, and Rebel Robin, the fourth. So I decided to do both at once because they have the same goal, like expanding on a main character, but they did it in two very different ways, and I have two very opposite uh, opinions on them. So first I'd given 3 stars to this one, but after reading Rebel Robin I upgraded it for 4 star because it completely shifted my baseline. So yeah, it is pretty bad and I just give it a 1. I'd say it's just as bad and even worse than Suspicious Minds. But first I will start with this one. So the purpose of this book is to flesh out the character of Max during season 2 of the series. We get to see how she ended up in Hawkins from California. It's something that we hear about in the series, but just like vaguely implied. And the goal of this book was to give a little more insight on that. So the book was written by Brenna Yovanoff, if I say it right. She's described as a young adult, science fiction and fantasy author. I honestly thought that she was a good match to write this book. She manages to put us inside Max's head, I think, in a way that's not too annoying. Like, for example, she's supposed to be 12 and she's kind of like, oh, not the other girls type. But she wasn't like the really grating type, you know, that's really in your face. It's more like she's more tomboyish and she legit doesn't understand other girls because she doesn't fit in the stereotypes. But it's done in a way that she doesn't put the other girls down. She just doesn't understand, she doesn't think she's better than everyone. At least that's not the feeling that this book gave me. So the author's writing style is pretty simple, but I find it fitting for the character's age and story. Some reviews actually dislike it, but I honestly think that the writing should fit the story. You know, it's not gonna be all flourished and poetic if you're in the head of a child. Honestly, I think it was a good fit for the book, and it wasn't dumbed down either. It just flew. So the story follows a 12-year-old Max who's arriving in Hawkins, and what led her and her family to move to Hawkins. Of course, the reason being Billy. It's hinted in the show that it's his fault, but the book tries to expand more on this. I thought the flashback flew mostly well with the story. Usually she was seeing or thinking something in Hawkins and then would think about California, it would remind her of it. And then it was pretty smoothly going back to the present story. And in these flashbacks we learn more about the personality of the members of her family, her parents, Billy's father, and Billy himself. So Max talks a bunch about her father, the fact that she loves him but she doesn't see him very much because her mother disapproves of him. And also he's got a house but it's not really fit to welcome a child there, since it's not very stable financially. She talks about her mother's bad relationships and then ending up with Neil, or Billy's father, who is also portrayed as a violent piece of shit just like in the show. And of course about Billy himself, the fact that when she met him she thought, oh, he's so cool, I'm excited that he's gonna be my brother, and then he turns out to be a complete asshole. And also in the story we can see her slowly starting to like Lucas more, but it's not in your face, so I thought that was good. So the scenes from season 2 were not retold in full details, but in a way it makes sense. I don't want to be retold the whole of season 2 because I've seen it like 5 or 6 times at this point. I mean, it makes sense that it wouldn't be in full details because Max wouldn't pay attention to what the boys would pay attention to, because she doesn't know the story behind everything they're doing. I mean, for her, they're just weird boys who are excluding her at some points, and it's making her angry because she didn't choose to be there, and she didn't choose to leave California. And of course, she doesn't believe the stories they tell her because she doesn't know anything about the Upside Down and such. As the story progresses and she gets more involved, also the scenes get more detailed because she starts learning about everything and she becomes more involved in it. I thought the book was pretty good at filling in the scenes between our meetings with the boys. For example, we know that Billy doesn't like Lucas at all, and he tells this after he sees him with her at the arcade.
The hell I tell you?
Oh, Lucas?
So he has a name now, huh? Well, you know what happens when you lie.
I'm not lying.
And in the show, it skips right to where she's taping up her skateboard, but we don't know what happened to it.
Max, are you getting that or what?
Okay!
Swear to God, man!
in the book there's a scene where Billy is working on his car in like the garage, and she left her skateboard on the driveway and he just runs over it as a punition for hanging out with Lucas. So that's kind of what I want from such a novel, is to fill in the gaps and build on the character by using stuff that we don't see in the original material. Because nothing I've read in this book felt out of character for Max, and that's great. Actually, even throughout the following season, which were not out when this book came out, it still holds up. So I think the author really tried to respect her character and to give her justice. When I'm reading, I feel like the author really had like the scenes in front of her when she was writing, because she describes a bunch of details that happened. My biggest criticism of this book is the ending. It felt really rushed and it's not developed. So I told that it ends with her at the snowball. So at between the snowball and her arriving in Hawkins, she goes in the tunnel to fight the demo dogs. She sees Steve's getting beat up by Billy, and we do get that scene, but then it skips right to the snowball, as if there wasn't a big event which would have marked her right afterwards, when 11 is going to go close the gate. I mean, I know I said that I don't want to be retold, but it wouldn't be a retelling because she doesn't see everything. We would just be in her mind and getting the feelings that she's experiencing at that moment, and she would probably be like, what the fuck is happening? So yeah, I don't know if they skipped that part because of time or because of page constraints, I don't know, but I think it was a bit disappointing. I wish the book had been longer in general, or maybe even written between season 3 and 4 instead. So I've read the reviews that were on Goodreads, and a lot of negative reviews come from expectations, and there are two completely opposite sides. So the author couldn't have won in any case. There was a side of, oh, I wanted a retelling of season 2, and the other side that I didn't want to hear anything about season 2 because I've seen it. I just wanted her time in California, for example. Personally, I didn't have any expectations reading this book. I had no idea what it would be like. I didn't read the reviews before reading it, and I liked it. And in general, the reviews are positive, and for once I agree with them. But now it is time for Rebel Robin. We get to follow her before she meets the gang, and she's around 15 to 16 years old. This book is written by Amy Rose Capetta. I don't know if I said it right either. They have a Master of Fine Arts in Writing for Children and Young Adults from Vermont College of Fine Arts. And that's pretty much all there is about them on the internet. This book is the opposite of Runaway Max. I talked about Max not being like the other girls. Well, Robin is too in this book, but she's the insufferable type. She even calls herself the weirdest girl in Hawkins several times. So the story kind of starts with the ending that's repeated later on, and I thought it was unnecessary. So basically, she's crashing into prom in a crazy outfit, running towards Tammy Thompson to ask her for a dance, which would be a big no-no because it's a small town in the 80s. But then, we're thrown back in time. For some part of the book, she's into Tammy. She doesn't realize that she's a lesbian, and she has her revelation a bit later on. She fawns over her during the whole story, but well, that's in accordance with what she says in season 3, so I didn't really mind that aspect as a concept. I mean, I feel like most teenagers, me included, at that phase, so I understand it. You can see that I have a bunch of tabs in this book, but I didn't have any here. Yellow is for stuff I found cringe or painful to read. Orange is Steve slander. I think this is the only thing I liked in this book. Oh, she was insulting him when she was thinking of him. Because, he was going around Tammy. And, let's be honest. If we had a crush in high school and someone was getting a little too close to them, we would just be jealous for no reason. However, the rest of her edginess is absolutely unbearable. I didn't recognize Robin at all in the story. Like, is this supposed to be about her? She was mean, know-it-all, and always thinking that she was better than everyone. So, I could imagine her as a teenager, well, even more of a teenager, being like sarcastic and maybe sometimes blurting out what she thinks, but she was just mean. Sometimes, or maybe most times, when she was interacting with adults, it was so cringe because this would have never happened. She says things that maybe we could have thought as teenagers, but she wouldn't have said them. And especially her, I could not imagine Robin saying these things. I mean, maybe it's stuff that you can learn to have the courage to say in your life, but not when you're 15. So we know from season 3 that she has a thing for languages, and it's mentioned many times in this book as well. She says she can speak 4 languages, and you know, when someone tells me that they can speak a language, I assume they can have a conversation, maybe make mistakes, but otherwise they can express what they mean in an understandable manner. So for example, I say I speak fluent English because right now I can talk to you without having to think about my words. Even though I have a script just to have my ideas in a more organized manner, I can talk without having to read the text. So she says she speaks all those languages, but then in the book, there are scenes when she's listening to like cassettes for learning, but like the most basic vocabulary. So which one is it? Does she speak them or is she just learning it? Also, you're 15. Like in the 80s, with not that much access to language learning material unlike we have right now. So it would have been pretty hard to be able to speak fluently 4 languages in America in a small town. Speaking of, speaking, she says at some point that she loves having conversations, and that's why she loves to learn languages as well, to collect words in foreign languages, but not shallow conversations like any other person. She wants to have deep conversations because she's not like the others. She is so bizarre that even though she wants to be invisible, even the teachers notice her. Give me a break. The whole story was painful to get through. Max's story is similar in a sense that it's the story of a teen that's struggling, but it was readable, even though it was meant for teenagers. And I'm definitely not a teenager anymore. This one was just impossible to read without wincing from cringe at every other page. The biggest sin, and it's one of my general pet peeves about books, especially young adult books, is the way the dialogue is written. I hate so much when teenagers speak like Shakespeare or a fucking sociologist, I don't know. You cannot put your adult knowledge in a teenager's mouth, especially in the setting. Even most adults don't speak like this. You tell me if you're gonna read this book, you can hear your father or mother say that? No, not even that. Nobody speaks like this. For example, she's hanging out with her best friend who's like half Japanese, and he's also 15-something, and they're watching MTV music videos. There's one with a sexy Asian woman, and he says, well, it's a translation from French because I couldn't find the book in English, so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. They are incapable of shooting a clip where anyone else but a white British man is not just an element of the decor. There's also Robin being annoyed at couples because that's what the societal norms want. And someone else says, smart people realize that love stories between high schoolers don't last, so they don't drag themselves into relationships they know won't last. I mean, even if you deep inside yourself you think that oh, it's not gonna last, I'm just in high school and I don't want it to last, you're not gonna say it the way it is said in this book. This is just unrealistic dialogue, and I really hate when this happens in a book. People don't talk or you write the text. When dialogues are realistic, even though they're crude or not very well written, but it's not written. That's what they say they speak. You don't speak how you write. I'm definitely not writing how I speak right now. Yeah, Robin is always, because I think it was the boyfriend of her best friend who said that. She acts all high and mighty all the time, she's better than everyone else. But this guy said that after flirting with her, and she doesn't even tell her best friend that he did. I'm sorry, but if the partner of my best friend was flirting with me, I would go and tell them right away. Because that's what friends are for, telling the truth. I wouldn't be able to look at them and remember what the boyfriend or girlfriend did and not say it because they shouldn't be with that person because they cannot trust them. So I'm saying this like white British man in a relationship. I'm not saying any of these things are wrong or are not true when there's like a message, but it's just that they're pulled out of nowhere from the situation. They don't fit the characters, they don't fit the setting. I think something that's important when you are trying to carry a message is to do it in the right situation, because otherwise it will just fly above people's head or you will just make them annoyed. It's about Robin. And yeah, it's about her being a lesbian, but there are other things about being a lesbian that you would think about, that teenagers can relate to, because yes, it's a book for teenagers. So about her best friend who's half Japanese, she says that he can play 9 instruments at 15. Same remark than her with her 4 languages. So either it's the stereotype of the smart Asian, or it's just that he can play electric guitar, so he can play classical, he can play acoustic, he can play banjo, bass, and he can play the piano, so he can play the synth, the harpsichord, and whatever has keys. No, he can also play the trumpet, I think. It's never said what he plays, apart from the keyboard, the trumpet, and the theremin. You know, that weird instrument that you don't have to touch? Why would you have that? So Robin also plays an instrument, as we see in the series. There's a bunch of scenes when she's rehearsing with the band, and obviously she's the weirdest girl in Hawkins. She would pick the one instrument that nobody wants. But we never see her practicing outside of class. And the class itself is always a mess. I wonder how she got this far, because she mentions that she's been invited to play at a wedding, so it means she cannot be that bad, right? But we don't actually see her practicing, and she doesn't take class seriously. Actually, apart from her bitching about everyone and everything, she doesn't do much. So I talked about how she calls herself the weirdest girl in Hawkins. Well, there's this teacher, and at the end it turns out to be gay, of course. And he has like these strange, deep conversations with her. And at some point he also calls her the weirdest girl in Hawkins. At one point she's late for class, and instead of an actual excuse on her notes, he writes an inside joke they have together. As if that would fly. So a big chunk of the story revolves around her wanting to go to Europe on a solo trip at 16. In a way, I can get behind it. You know, probably when we were teenagers we had these wild ideas that we were always thinking about but never actually putting into practice, because deep down we knew that it was stupid. The problem with this subplot is that it's really annoying. She's obsessed about France.
Oui, oui, baguette. Bisous.
If she went there, she would probably like get the Paris syndrome. If you don't know about it, it's a real thing. And at some point, she reconsiders going solo, and she's trying to find someone to accompany her, and spends a lot of time just thinking about who. She almost goes to the airport to go to Europe without her parents knowing, but she gets caught, obviously, and she decides to go to prom instead. And this whole subplot at the end is just background noise that didn't really add anything to the story. So I've just been talking about how I feel like this isn't the Robin we know, but most of the other characters from the series receive this treatment in the book. So for example, she goes to the store and she sees Mike's mom there, and she says that she has no problem treating the cashier as her inferior. And during the same scene, she sees Robin buy candy and she asks, "Oh, only candy, sweetie. You're lucky you don't have to watch your weight yet." It's such a hateful interaction. That's the only time we see Mike's mom, and that's all we get from her. I mean, I know she's not a perfect person at all, but I have a hard time imagining the scene. Also, Robin sees Will because he's like there with Mike and her mom, and she calls him a loser in the making in her head. That's that's what I meant when I said she was so mean for no reason. Like, maybe, you know, if she's a loser herself, she can look at someone and think, "Oh, you're probably gonna get it bad like I did." But the way it was said, it was really like she was thinking something very mean about him. And I cannot imagine Robin doing it. Another victim is Barb. Literally, I guess. Apparently, she used to be friends with Robin. And you know, in the series, then afterwards Nancy was her friend. Nancy was very adamant that it's not possible that she ran away. I know her. She's my best friend. She wouldn't do something like this, so please look for her. Robin, she thinks, "Oh, since I want to leave this town, Barb wanted to. So she's fine. She just ran away. Zero concern for her former best friend. Even after a while, without any news, she just still thinks, she ran away. I don't know, she's probably shopping in New York or something. Another, Joyce. Robin is looking for work to fund her Europe trip, and she goes to Joyce's store. And Joyce tells her that she's probably too smart to work here. And the manager comes and says, we don't hire teenagers because it doesn't like or trust them. And then Robin goes on a rant about how she agrees with him, but at the same time that if there was a teenager in the store, then other teenagers would be more likely to enter it and he would get sales. And yeah, all of her interactions with adults are this unrealistic and cringe. Remember, all the yellow is cringe. And I probably didn't tab all of it. The only one who's, I guess the one who's closest to character in this book is Bob. Because, she's looking for work, so she goes to Radio Shack. But even that is badly done because she enters, she just speaks a line to him and she thinks that he's the best man. He's so pure and innocent. Even though she's been a bitch to everyone for the entirety of the story. And Bob goes on another speech about life. How she's going to find her place. But not here because she doesn't know anything about electronics. Yovanoff, I feel like she was great at knowing the characters and really trying to see what's in them. But I feel like in this book, it was like the author was projecting what she wanted or she thought the characters to be. Maybe she's like, I hate fucking suburban moms, so Karen is gonna be a bitch. We don't see it in the series, but I don't believe it. Her name's Karen, for fuck's sake. And like I said, I agree with a bunch of messages in this book. It's because it's inserted in long, unrealistic speeches instead of distilled into the story itself, which is how you should try to push your message through, by putting it into the characters, like in their experiences. For example, the next book is Lucas on the Line, so about Lucas, obviously. It's going to be about racism, and I really hope that the message is pushed through his experiences, like he's being bullied or stuff because of it, rather than outright saying it. So hopefully it is better than this, because otherwise I will lose all hope for this book series. So another one. You thought it was over. No, there's Hopper also in this book. Robin is walking on the road because their parents took her bicycle because Will disappeared. Hopper passes with his car. He asks if she wants a ride, asks her where she's going, and then he goes on a speech. If you're going to meet a boy, it's dangerous, blah 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 blah. And then he says, I know Hawkins is boring, something that Robin is thinking the entirety of the book, and he calls her darling. Well, I don't know if it's exactly darling since I said it was the French version. Yeah, he calls her something like darling, then puts sunglasses on and drives away. Did he ever say the word like darling or something similar in the series? Darling. I can imagine him saying asshole or something, but darling. The book ends, so it begins with her crashing the prom. Literally after crashing her parents' car into the parking lot, into several other cars. I forgot the rest, because honestly it wasn't interesting at all. And I read it like a few months ago. She just runs inside after getting refused because she's wearing a shitty outfit. And she gets chased by Hopper, who has no other things to do than to be at prom. It's just because it's the only cop. Well, no, there are 3 cops with a name in the series, I guess. But, it's the most recognizable cop, so it has to be there because it's Stranger Things. Anyway, rant over. Reading this pile of crap made me appreciate this one much more. I think these books are great to compare together, to see someone who actually tried from someone who didn't seem to have. And also who understood characters and wanted to do them justice, and who felt like they were projecting what they wanted the characters to be onto them. Like, nothing I read about Max felt off of character in this one. And like I said, it's still held up after season 3 and 4. So it means that that's how the character is. And maybe some facts would be wrong, but the general feeling and personality of her would be kept. This one, total opposite. It's not Robin. It felt so bitter and angry. And I know that a lot of teenagers are bitter and angry, but this doesn't help. Like, she hates everything, everyone. Where in the book, she even starts liking Steve after realizing he's not that much of an asshole. And I know we change as teenagers. When we become adult, we realize, damn, why was I doing that? But the way she's portrayed, it would have needed a big change for her to become who we've seen the series. And it's not that long afterwards that we meet her, so it's like the only trait that was kept is lesbian. And then the whole story was built around her. And the rest is just a whole new person with the same name. Robin can be pretty acid and sarcastic in the show, but this was just mean. So yeah, the one I do recommend reading if you like Max. Maybe not if you're a hardcore fan and imagine her story in your head, because I guess you'd be disappointed. If you like Max, you don't have any expectations, I think this is a good read. Pretty short anyway. And it handles a few topics that some people might recognize in their lives. For example, her loneliness after she gets shipped from California to Hawkins. The fact that there's domestic violence in her family, that the grown-ups suck, financial difficulties, bullying, and those are struggles that many people face. And I thought they were told in a pretty realistic manner. But this one, it sucks. And I will die on that hill, no matter what you say. Yeah. I mean, I guess there were a few positive aspects in the book, but they were so drowned by the rest that I don't even bother remembering them. So I will forget its existence. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you do read this one, I hope you enjoy it. And see you next time.